I just spent a lot of money in my master's degree
Yeah.
and I'm not even being a social worker, right? So there was a lot of like internal conflict, but I think that as I was building my brand, I was like really trying to create a movement because if I was realizing that I have these skills, even though I have a degree, I was like, I know that I can do more. I don't have to stay in the social work bubble. I started having that realization. I'm like, I'm not the only one. So when I started creating this movement, I was able to help social workers pivot as well and secure 6-figure jobs and leave the traditional social work profession.
Mi gente, dímelo. What's good? Welcome to another episode of the Quién, Eres podcast brought to you by Plural. You already know, it's your boy Pavel bringing you another very special episode with another very special guest. Speaking of guests, the clip in the intro that you heard is with this week's guest, Harleny. If you're new to this podcast, let me give you some quick background. Our mission for the show is to redefine professionalism because most of us, when we go into work, turns out that we're faking it. We're hiding who we are. So every week, we have a different guest join us for a very candid conversation around the conflict that they've experienced between professionalism and authenticity. The hope is that these conversations will help you unlearn what you've been taught about professionalism and hopefully inspire you to be your most authentic self. That said, the clip in the intro that you heard is with this week's guest, Harleny Vasquez. Before getting into the full conversation, let me give you a quick bio so you have more context into who she is. So Harleny is a first-generation Latina, a licensed social worker turned career coach. She's the CEO and founder of Your Evolved Mind, a career consulting firm that has dedicated their efforts to supporting the next generation of social workers. This targeted career consulting to a very specific audience of social workers is aimed to transform and redefine their career narratives, to help them expand what they've thought their possibilities were around this specific career path. It'll make a lot more sense once you listen to this episode and see that she started on a pretty traditional career path for a social worker and then has pivoted to a career in tech. She wants to help others reimagine what their career could be like as well. Anyway, now that you have a little bit more context into who Harleny is, please be sure to also check out the show notes to get a full bio. One last thing, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice that we shot this episode at a coffee shop. I want to give a big shout out to 787 Coffee, which is a brand that I love. Besides the delicious coffee, they also have a bunch of different locations throughout New York City, around 15 actually. It's a great place to do work. The staff is really nice. They know what they're talking about when it comes to coffee, and it just makes for a dope place to work from as well. So if you're in town and need somewhere to work or just get some coffee, check out 787 Coffee. With all of that said, I think it's ready that we get into the episode. All right, so let's start off the conversation how we always do, right?
Okay, yeah.
The word authenticity.
Yes.
It's a buzzword. You probably hear it all the time.
I mean, like, yo, deal with your podcast, so I know.
You like, I've been practicing for this.
That ass, no, I'm joking.
What does it mean to you though, when you hear the word?
I feel like it's more of like just being in a space where you could breathe, right?
Oh, yo,
Like,
somebody said that. Yo, that's a good one. Somebody said that the other day to me.
For real?
Yeah.
It's just because it's like kind of, I feel like I can breathe. Like, it's like a feeling where I can be comfortable in my own skin, right?
Okay.
Like, that's what I feel being authentic. Like, I was mentioning when I got here, like, remember I was like, I'm loud and all of those things. And like many of us, right? Sometimes we feel like we need to like silence our voice and all of those things, right? Again, me being a natural extrovert and constantly loud, or just because that's just my tone of voice, I feel like being authentic is just being able to breathe and being able to just like that sense of wusa. Like, I can just literally be myself, like in a safe space. So that is what authenticity means to me.
It's so funny because as soon as you walked in, you felt the need to preface that you were loud.
I still do that,
Like
literally.
10 times. And I was like, girl, you good. Like, you're not going to be too loud. Like, it's like, whatever. Is that something you've been called like early on, like you were loud?
Literally. They were like, Harleny, baja la voz, Harleny, you're being too loud. To this day, I still get it from family members. It's like, calm down. But it's more of like a mindset thing that even adult me, millennial me, I still have to like catch myself like like you said, like I was literally calling myself, like you didn't even say anything.
Yeah, it was like, hello. Oh, I'm so loud. I was like, damn, it's all right. You good?
So it's kind of me trying to make the safe space ahead of time, right? So I'm like, hey, by the way, I'm not loud. So it kind of, I'm beating the punch, if that is what I say, right? So it's kind of like that feeling of being like, again, still working on it. And I think it's just a matter of, especially that we're meeting for the first time, even though I feel like obviously I know you.
I feel like I know you too.
We've been connected, you know, on social media, but it's more of like, hey, look, I'm loud because I'm more outside of social media. It's again, it's still an internal thing, right? That I'm still working on.
Well, it's not just internal because people tell you that.
Yes.
So
it makes it my reality.
Exactly. It validates the internal thoughts that you probably already thinking about yourself. But growing up, like, all right, loud is one thing. Like, what were some other things? What were some expectations you think your family had for you on like, hey, don't be that loud? Like, what else?
So I'm a first generation.
Dominican?
Dominican. So I'm born and raised in Dykeman, yeah, Dykeman. And then, you know, went to the Bronx. And then I literally lived in all the 5 boroughs except Staten Island, literally. But obviously, majority of my life was Dykeman and then for 6 years in the Bronx before now in Jersey, right?
Yeah.
But being a first generation eldest daughter, I'm literally the oldest in like, even among the primas.
Oldest of how many?
Well, for my mom, I have 1 sister.
Yo, I was about to say, all say mom and dad, because you know how Dominican men be doing.
Literally.
Yo,
so, but for my dad, I have, in total, I have 6 siblings. I'm still the second oldest.
All right, this is so off topic, but do you consider all of your brothers and sisters? Do you call them step brothers and sisters?
No.
I don't consider my siblings brothers and sisters.
I think it's crazy because, like, again, everyone has like a different journey. Like, long story short, first generation, I was raised by a single mother, right? So I am the first daughter to my mother, and for my father, I'm still the first girl, right? I just have an older brother.
Yeah.
And then for my mom, I have a younger sister. We're just 2 years apart. Then after that, obviously, after my parents separated, then that's where I got all the other siblings. So I think that from young, because my dad left when I was 6 years old, I already had to embark that, again, first gen, kind of like, what's the saying? Like la responsabilidad, like that's it. They're under me in a way, right? Like I'm building the path, and I have built the path. Being the first associates, bachelors, masters, home ownership. I mean, the list goes on, literally. So I've had to have had that title and that role since I was little. So I think ever since I was little, my mom definitely had a lot of expectations on me, like tú eres la más grande, you should know better, right? Like calm down, like tone it down. Everywhere I go, even in school, they'll be like, oh, ya está maestría, right? And then I remember in school, think about like elementary, middle school.
Parent-teacher conferences
literally,
and stuff?
Ella marquía. Like, what?
Wait, the teacher said that or your mom said that?
My mom said that to me because basically the teachers were saying that I was like acting out or like speaking up and all those things, right? So it was more along the lines of my mom was like, oh, tú eres marquía, or rebelde, right? Or rebelde, right? And of course, back then, as a young child, you don't know those things that impact you later on in life.
Right. Why were they giving you that feedback about you in class? So what were you doing in class? Were you just talkative? Raise your hand? Okay.
I wouldn't say raise my hand. I would say like I will be a mix between talking a lot, but also silencing myself.
What?
Yeah, it's weird. It's like a mix because I think it really depends the space and the circle, right? Like if I found my clique, woo, it went on. But if I wasn't around certain people that I felt comfortable with, and mind you, again, I grew up in Dykeman, so you know everyone is, you know, low income, diverse, and all of those things. But even thinking back then, it was just more along the lines of, I still had to like, had that role of like, you should know better.
So what was it around? So like I don't get it though. So in class you were talkative, right? Because you're an extrovert. You said that. You were social. I get that. But then when did you not feel comfortable and you had to silence yourself that you felt like you went to the bank or something? I don't know. Like you were running errands with your mom. Like what was it?
I'm thinking just. Well, we would go to people's houses as well, right? Or you know, like they'll be like, oh, I will always be like yelling. Even like again, being someone young, like a little girl, like when people have memories of me, they were like, oh, sí, Harleny, la que habla alta, like I always scream.
To this day, they say that, like that's a reputation.
That's literally my reputation. right? So it's kind of like that role kind of stuck with me as an adult. Obviously, I love myself now.
Sure.
But back then, all that did was for my self-esteem, like, okay, like I'm not enough, or I need to silence my voice. And once I got into higher education, I think it came out even more like, whoop, I just kind of silenced my voice. I just stuck my head under the ground. And I think I found more my voice when I started my business. After I, graduated with my master's degree in social work, which was only 5 years ago. And I started my business, Year About Mine, in 2019. So I think being able to build a platform for me, not even getting the master's, being the first, like that didn't even help me gain my voice or allow me to be authentic, right? Because even in spaces and nonprofit jobs, I still also silence myself.
Tell me about when you started higher ed though. Like, why did you feel the need to silence yourself?
I think even thinking about, like, as you can only imagine, certain institutions, and I went to school in New York, right? And I felt that the space, again, I think the theme is spaces and
depending where you are,
right? I think that, I first started in going to a community college, right? I went to BCC, so not community. And then I was able to transfer to a 4-year, and then from there I went to graduate school. So obviously, not in community college, I felt, okay there. I was still trying to find myself, but still silencing my voice. But I think that.
But even in community college, where maybe this is just an assumption, you were surrounded by people that maybe look like you?
Yes, and I think that also had to do with my internal, at that time, I think it was still internal struggle.
So it was just like you telling yourself, am I good enough to be in this room sort of thing?
Yes, because even when people would speak and raise their hand for an answer, I wouldn't raise my hand, but I would think about it.
Oh my God, yeah.
I'll be like, wait a minute, maybe
it's like, damn, I had the answer too.
Yes, and all the time, even thinking again, even as I transitioned into 4-year and even master's degree, being around people that sounded smarter than me, that also ate my self-esteem alive. Because I'm like, I don't know what you call it, street smart, book smart, whatever you call it. I'm like, I don't know, in the middle or something. At that time, that's what I thought to myself. I'm like, I'm in the middle.
Was anyone telling you this?
No, this is how powerful the mind is.
It is.
Because I will create these stories in my head. My mom, even though she made comments.
I'm like, bro, somebody pick up that phone. No, it's not my phone. Fine, por fin.
Even though my mom, younger, she will make comments about tú eres marqueada, tú eres rebelde.
Right.
She always still was my biggest cheerleader, right? So she always like, you gotta keep pushing. And obviously now she's like me, I can't even keep up with you. I'm just like beyond, so proud. But I think that, again, being the first gen, there's no book. You're
writing the book.
You are writing the book. There you go. I'm paving the way. So I'm just like going to these spaces and institutions and classrooms, and my mindset, it's literally anxiety, depression at a young age. It started kind of slowly but building without me realizing, like, I'm not okay, right? Like, I had trauma and all of those things, and you need to heal and and obviously I talk about that a lot. Like healing your inner child, right? I'm in therapy for that. Healing your inner child.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, all those things when you kind of view that trajectory in your life and kind of build what were the things that really set me up for where I am today.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, going back to being able to start my business, my platform on LinkedIn, building a personal brand, that I was like, I have nothing to lose. Like, I can literally just speak my truth.
Yeah.
Like, what do I have to lose?
But for someone that spent so many years silencing their voice or dimming their light, whatever you want to call it, how do you get from that to feeling comfortable to speak on like social media and stuff like that? Like, how do you get to that?
Yes.
You said you worked in between a little bit and then you launched your brand?
Working, like, in regards to, like, myself?
No, so you said, well, that too, but like you said you were studying, you did your master's, and then you kind of jumped to like starting this brand. But in between that, you also held some jobs in like nonprofit and all those kind of things too, right?
Yes, honestly, I get asked that question a lot because the truth is we forget the things that we have done, right?
Yeah, go for it.
We forget the things that we have done in the past, that we have taken, the conversations that we had. So I think it was the breakdown, that you want to call it.
Sure. Yeah.
Was when I graduated with my master's degree. And for those who don't know, in social work, there's many different paths. You can go clinical, you can go macro, you can go work in the community, you could be licensed, not licensed.
Yeah.
It really depends what you want to do. At that time, when I was graduating with my master's degree, mind you, 5 years ago, my
No, that's fine. That's fine.
My vision at that time was to become a hospital social worker, literally for MYP. Like I was like, MYP, Presbyterian Hospital, like that's gonna be me. Like that was like,
Why was that for you, like the thing?
I think because being first gen, growing up in low income, being raised by a single mother, I always knew that I wanted to help others and give back, which is why I studied psychology and got into social work, because I started working in the field even before I got my master's. So I worked in foster care for 4 years. I worked in the shelter system. I worked with at-risk youth, homeless youth.
Yeah. A lot of social
years.
workers go. Yeah, my aunt did like a very similar thing.
Yeah, like literally 10 years in social services. So by the time I got my master's, I'm just like, okay, what now? But I think because I wanted to become a hospital social worker, back then, obviously things have changed. You needed your license. Right?
Sure.
And let me tell you, I struggled with my life with this exam, and I constantly talk about it. So it literally took me 5 times to pass this exam. I'm a licensed social worker now, finally.
Yeah.
But that time, when it came to 2018, my breakdown was not being able to pass this exam. Think about it, being in school since kindergarten.
Yeah.
And I went straight. I mean, I did take a year from bachelor's to master's,
Sure.
but I went straight to school. And here's this thing hanging over my head, like, Harleny, you're almost there. You need a license and then you're gonna be successful. That was my mindset, right? So I was allowing my career to dictate my work. So I think that in 2018, that summer after I graduated, I hit rock bottom.
Because you didn't pass?
I didn't pass. I was like, what now? Because again, I have this experience. So I'm like, I don't want to go back to social services because I know that I can do so much more. I have a master's degree.
Right.
So it was like that summer realization, like, okay, what am I going to do? But I'm not a quitter. So I'm like, I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep pushing. And I think that also the realization was at that time I was able to secure a supervisory role in social services, right? Without being a supervisor, right? Because of my transferable skills. But I think once 2019 hit and I was trying to pass, it just wasn't clicking. And again, I was relying on this exam to dictate my worth. And it wasn't until fall 2019, I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, I'm gonna keep trying to let this exam dictate my career, my life. Like, I need to make moves. Like, there's no way that I studied so hard, got myself into these student loans to then just be stuck here.
Right.
So it was a lot of self-talk, even though deep down I was still struggling with those, inner battles. It was those constant ups and downs. And as you know, it's not easy to overcome those things. But like I said, I'm not a quitter. I'm like gonna make sure, not saying that, for people who are listening, that I'm not trying to say that you're a quitter if you don't have the motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
I'm saying that everyone's support system also looks different. Luckily, I have my now husband, who at that time was like, I know you could do more, right? Because one thing I forgot to mention throughout early on in my career, I was always a natural career cheerleader. Even though I had those moments where I did silence myself, people would still come to me on the side, like, hey, Harleny, can you help me with my resume? Can you help me with this? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And mind you, I did this for free.
So you were always seen as like the go-to person to help with their career trajectory.
Exactly, which is that's how I was able to use my transferable skills to land that leadership role.
But it's interesting, right? Because like here you are being so critical on yourself and your career, yet people are putting you on a pedestal and saying your career is what you've accomplished so far is amazing. Help me get to where you are. Yet you're also looking up, trying to be like, no, I'm trying to get further.
Yeah. And I always say, like, as you know, the biggest battle you ever face is yourself, right? So regardless if people constantly refer me as a shining light, and many times I didn't feel like a shining light, right? Because of my own self-esteem and, again, depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's more going back to, like you mentioned earlier, that sense of authenticity, right? And I think it's about how do we get to a space from not loving where we are in our current journey to accepting all of our trumps and challenges, right? Like, that's the constant battle that many of us face.
Yeah.
And I think that, like I said, that fall of 2019, I was like, I have to do more. And it wasn't even like, I'm gonna start a business, I'm gonna make it. Like, it wasn't from that intention. It was like, I just want to share my truth. And that's what I meant about just sharing content on LinkedIn and Instagram about I'm a first gen, I just graduated, I'm a social worker, you know, I'm not the only one struggling with this license.
Yeah.
So the moment I started to speak my truth and just be me,
Yeah.
people started to gravitate towards me because of my story.
When you say gravitate, like that's like actual messages, like people messaging you and being like, "Oh shit, yeah, I'm also struggling with this."
Yes.
It's interesting too because before that, did you think like, it's me, I'm not smart enough, I'm not this enough, I'm not whatever enough, like I must be the only one failing this exam?
Absolutely. I felt like there's something wrong with me. I'm
Right,
like,
right.
you know, my words, I feel stupid. I'm
Right.
like, I can't even grasp this 4-hour test, by
Right,
the way.
right. But then when you start posting things, that's the powerful thing about just like talking about situations is that you realize for the first time that you're not alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that was the moment of awakeness.
No, you're good. You're good.
I think that was a moment that I realized, like, wow, like, I'm worthy, right? Like, I mean something. I have purpose, right? Again, not saying we need other people's validation to
Right,
feel
right.
that gratitude. People were constantly saying, like, oh my God, you're so inspiring. You know, you're pushing me to continue studying for my exam. I know I'm not alone. So it's kind of giving people that sense of hope, like, you can still keep going, right?
Right,
And
right,
I
right.
think that, you know, the moment that I started to step into this role, right,
Yeah.
as a natural career cheerleader,
Yeah.
then once, right before the pandemic hit, like my DMs were literally blowing up to the point that I was like, I have to create an LLC because I don't want the IRS coming for me. So it really started from a place of just building community. And mind you, another thing I forgot to mention is that even before that, I was helping, like I mentioned, I was helping people with resumes on the side,
Yeah.
and I wasn't charging until, again, my now husband, he was like, you gotta charge. And I'm like, charge? What are you talking about? I'm not gonna charge. It was like, you gotta charge, that's your time. And I'm like, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But you know, that comes from like money trauma and all these things.
Well, also the work that you come from in social work, it's not like I'm gonna go into social work to make billions of dollars. Like you're literally helping people. There's something my aunt struggles with as well. Like I tell her, in her private practice, she charges pennies. But it's this idea of like, no, like these people need me. They need me in order to like be well. And there's just this idea of like social service and like not charging a lot of money. I don't know how to explain, but does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I blame the profession. And that's what I'm trying. Like,
It makes sense.
Like
this
me
whole time you've
among
been
many other
trained
people.
to look at business a certain way through like the profession that you were about to go into for a long time.
Literally. And I would say like it came right at the moment, like I said, at the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
That as my business started to slowly flourish, right?
Yeah.
At that time, I was still a supervisor for a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
And it gave me the realization that I was more invested in my staff's professional development than I was in the families that we were serving. And it sucks to say that, but I had that realization that this is not where I need to be.
Interesting.
Yes. And remember how I said I've been a natural career cheerleader all my life without really realizing it?
Yeah. But was there like shame in that?
Yes, a lot of shame because I'm like, I just spent a lot of money in my master's degree
Yeah.
and I'm not even being a social worker, right? So there was a lot of like internal conflict, but I think that as I was building my brand, I was like really trying to create a movement because if I was realizing that I have these skills,
Yeah.
even though I have a degree, I was like, I know that I can do more. I don't have to stay in the social work bubble. I started having that realization. I'm like, I'm not the only one. So when I started creating this movement, I was able to help social workers pivot as well and secure 6-figure jobs and leave the
Right.
traditional social work profession.
That's what's interesting too. Like you I don't know, maybe I'm making up this story in my head, right? But like you're like, oh my God, am I not helping people anymore?
Yes,
Right?
literally.
Because that's what you've wanted to do your whole life, right? You want to give back, you want to help people, and you've been trained to believe that the only way to help people is like this, and the only types of people that I can help are the ones that are like in need.
Yes.
Yet everyone's in need for a certain service, everyone is in need for something, and now you're still helping people. It's just a different audience.
Oh my God, so powerful. Yes,
Right?
literally in my head because
But like maybe you were comparing yourself
Yeah.
to, you were like,
I still do sometimes, you know.
Yeah, to people maybe that are licensed, that have the life that you thought you wanted years ago. You probably were like, it's tough, yo.
It's crazy, and it's
I still
like,
do it today
and it's just
to like
like,
old coworkers, TikTok
yeah,
and yeah. Oh my God, I was just looking at somebody's story and I was like, oh, that could have been me. But at the
yeah,
same time, I don't want that to be me.
exactly.
Weird.
Exactly. No, it's like we are evolving, right? As we should, right? We're
Yeah.
it's human nature. We evolve. But I
Yeah.
think that in being able to have that realization, I was able to then pivot from, leaving social services and pivoting into nonprofit recruiting, where I was a recruiter for school social workers in New York, right? I was recruiting school social workers and they were
Right.
still giving back to the community.
Right.
So in a way, I was still fulfilling this purpose of
Right.
helping the community, right? And then I was
Right.
still able to also use those skills and still pivot into, mental health tech and still recruit
Yeah.
providers who are
Right.
serving the community, right?
Right.
So I think it's about realizing that when I see that end result, whether it's my clients, whether it's a candidate, and I'm like, ooh, I feel them. Like I feel their emotion, I feel the success. Like that's my win at the end of the day, right? If I can help someone overcome imposter syndrome, if I can help a candidate ease their mind in an interview, or even help them secure that offer, I am still fulfilling my purpose,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
still, at the end of the day, creating this movement. I always say enough is enough. There's no more, I'm a social worker, I don't get paid, or the stigma of we take kids away. Like I went to the doctor like over the summer and they were like, what do you do? I still brand myself as a social worker because again, I'm still a social worker at heart. I'm
That's-
utilizing social work skills in these conversations and relationships I'm building.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a social worker. They're like, that must be tough. You don't make a lot of money, right? And I looked at him, and mind you, he was a white man. I was just there like, I'm leaving. I left.
Why do you brand yourself as a social worker till this day?
Because
not-
I think it's because like,
You like you're a tech.
no, but I think that I was also many hats about me. I'm a co-author for a book called Latinx in Social Work Volume 2.
I have a copy.
I was,
I do have a copy.
I've been awarded as an emerging social work trailblazer.
Oh, you just gonna flex on us? That's what you doing?
Again, you gotta give your, like everybody, you gotta give yourself a pat on the back because even though I'm having a little hype session, I don't hype myself up enough. Like many of us don't. But I still brand myself as a social worker because again, like I'm still involved, right? I'm still helping create the future. I'm helping support the next generation of leaders in social work, in public service. So I'm a social work trailblazer. That's what I call myself.
Okay.
And because even though, yes, I may work in tech right now, but I know that I'm not going to work there forever, right? I don't want to brand my identity to a corporate space. I want to brand my identity as who I am, right?
Gotcha.
Even though social work is a career, like I mentioned before, I'm utilizing the skills that social work school taught me, right? Being empathetic, building relationships, building community, implementing policies and just restructuring and like disrupting the norm. That's
love
what
it.
I'm doing. And that's a social worker.
Well, I love it, and it's interesting too because I think since you've pivoted, you've also entered spaces that you didn't necessarily plan to work in early on, right? And from how you were described as a kid to silencing your voice to now being in certain spaces that you didn't plan on being in, can you breathe in those spaces?
Yes.
Do you feel like you can be yourself? And I'm not saying right now, right?
Yeah,
But like
yeah.
as you pivoted,
Yeah.
do you think you could be yourself?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think I had moments. I had moments where I felt safe enough and I had the support to be myself. But even in social service, there were moments where I'm like, I cannot speak up. My mind told me that I can't speak up.
Tell me
right?
about it. Why not?
And I think it was more going back to not feeling good enough and not feeling smart enough to be able to come up with a solution, right? Because again, even though, yes, they were so diverse, population and just the team overall, I still didn't feel that I can be in a safe space to be myself because I constantly felt I was going to be judged, right? And it could have been as simple as we're having a team meeting and we're going over cases, but I don't want to speak because again, at that moment, I felt like I'm not good enough to speak, right? Because I was constantly selling my voice. So I think that throughout those spaces, and even now, honestly, working like, going to tech and all of those things, there's a lot of stigma around tech. But I think that even from the very beginning, even like before I started working for, where I work now, I made a promise to myself that I'm no longer going to allow anyone to silence me. And then if I was to embark in the next chapter of my career and work for whoever, I'm not going to be silenced. So luckily and thankfully, I'm in a space now where I can be my authentic self. But if for any reason I wasn't, then that wouldn't be the environment for me.
Yeah.
Because I made that promise to myself. And again, I'm a career coach.
Yeah.
Right? Also, not saying we always practice what we preach, because I have my moments, but I think that I am my own brand. So I want to make sure like I stick to my own core values.
Yeah. But what was that moment for you when you made that promise? Like, why did you make that promise?
I think that, between the pandemic, right? I unfortunately lost family members during the pandemic.
Sorry.
And then I think that, just having that wake up call, like I mentioned, about like enough is enough, about like life. I think it was a combination of realizing that life is short, realizing that I no longer could be a harm to myself with my thoughts, right? Because it was making me sick, literally physically sick.
What
right?
happened?
Like very symptomatic. I was always starting to become very symptomatic, whether I had a headache, whether my stomach was hurting, right?
Yeah.
So that trauma
Yeah.
passes in many different ways,
Let
right?
me tell you, I know when I'm really anxious, when I don't poop that day. Like this week, there was one day I skipped a day. But then the next day I made up for it, TMI. But there be days, no lie, where I've missed like 2-3 days. But it starts here and it literally trickles down to my whole body.
Oh my God, 100%. And one thing I forgot to mention
My
is
bad.
that everyone drink your water, make sure everyone's eating healthy. But
It's real. It's real.
But I think that when I started entrepreneurship, even though it was still and current my side hustle,
Yeah.
as you know, when you work for yourself, the biggest insecurities you will ever face come up, right? Because no one's telling you, hey, great job, you're doing
Yeah,
this,
oh
right?
my God.
So that was one important piece that
Oh
I
my
forgot to
God.
mention. That, again, being a social worker, you would think, be in therapy. No, I had to start my business to then realize, hey, I'm not okay, I need therapy. And let me give you an example. As you know, the hustle and grind mentality is real. So once I started my business, I wanted to be involved in everything. That it will become moments where out of nowhere I will start crying. I'll be like, just start crying with anxiety. I would just start crying because my nervous system was like shutting down. I just couldn't process in general.
Yeah.
To the point that I'm like, okay, I need to speak to someone now, right? And obviously now, almost 3 years later, I'm still in therapy and healing. And I think that I constantly say that don't ignore yourself. Don't ignore your mental health, regardless of what you have, because it's going to come up in different ways that you never thought possible. Who would have thought that I would be randomly crying?
Yeah. And why? What were you so anxious about?
In general, I think it's just, again, like I said, starting a business, I
Yeah.
wanted to be in everything, from being a board member to volunteering to getting clients to doing free speaking. I was just like, yeah, I want to do it. And so I kind of like burned myself out and crashed. And I think that caused that
Yeah.
sense of overwhelm. And mind you, this is all with a full-time job on
Yeah.
top of that.
I feel you. I think that's so interesting. This idea of working for yourself and needing some sort of like validation. Like if you're working a job on some level, someone at some point is going to be like, oh, good job. That was a good email. Oh, good meeting. Whatever it is. When you're working for yourself, you got to tell yourself that, unless, people DM you or stuff like that, which is possible too, right? But yeah, I don't know. That's just really interesting. I'm just thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has their own routine. Like, I know not everyone likes meditation. I know not everyone likes journaling.
I like journal. I don't like meditation. I like journaling.
Journal, hey, write a letter to yourself.
You do that?
Yeah, as part of the inner childhood work.
Okay.
Yeah, for those who are in therapy and know about inner childhood work, those are some of the exercises. Like writing a letter to your younger self, forgiving them for, letting them know that they're loved and that they're supported. Like, I constantly talk to myself every day, little me, right? Again, for those who don't understand this word, they're gonna be like, what is she talking about? But literally Google inner childhood work and a whole bunch of things are gonna come up. It's really powerful. Again, I know not everyone believes in that, and that's okay. I'm a very spiritual person, And I always talk about manifestation and signs and all of those things. But I think that, I mean, looking at right now, Pac-Man, it's like go, 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 right? But I have to make sure that I put myself first in order for me to be able to do the work that I love and support the community that I love. Because without that, there's nothing.
See, that's interesting too. At an early age, you probably weren't able to put yourself first.
I never.
Yeah, I remember one time my mom always brings this up. Me and her were like in a car one day, and she didn't even ask me. I just told her straight up. I was like, for some reason, I was like, Mom, you know where you rank in my life? And I put her like number 5, but I put myself first. And I forget the order exactly, but like she wasn't. It was like at the time I was really religious as well, so I was like me, God, abuela,
Yeah.
then mom or some shit like that, right?
Yeah.
But even at an early age, I've always been like really, really selfish. So it's easy to put myself first, even these days.
Yeah.
But I could see for you, especially with like taking on that adult role really early within the family, how you had to put others first and you were forced to.
Yeah, and when you think about it, how everything embarks, and as you know in the book that I mentioned,
Yeah.
I speak a little bit about that, how I had to, learn how to love myself for me and not rely on other people's validation to make me happy, right? And I learned that the hard way, right? Because when I didn't get a, certain birthday appreciation or this or that, then that will eat me alive. And I'm like, why? You know what I mean? And again,
Yeah.
thinking about all these little things and everything that I'm mentioning, this was before therapy.
Even that certification, like you said, the license rather, that's
I
a
was
form of
not that
validation.
Exactly. Form of validation,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's fascinating that as a social worker, and it's funny because I know other social workers and they also weren't in therapy for a long time as well. Like, why do you think that is? Even with you seeing, like, you're convincing other, I don't know. What is
I
that?
will tell you this story. So again, I knew, like, obviously I need to go to therapy, but because we have the degree and we have that background,
yeah.
when we start searching, we're like, no.
Oh,
no.
that's what it is.
That's what it was. Until someone told me very close to me, was like, I got the perfect therapist for you. And she's an Afro-Latina. And that was another thing, trying to find someone that you can relate on a cultural level as well. Because, you go to psychology today and you're like, how are they going to help me? People give, again, no shame to the college today, and obviously many clinicians out there who are doing their thing. But as you know, especially as a Latina, you have to make sure that you're able to feel comfortable. Going back to the safe space. Going back to the safe space, and I think with her, it was beautiful. We got on a call, even though it was like, she was just like, hi, like it was just kind of breaking the ice and creating that safe space for me. Then like, let's get on a call. Tell me about your life. It's like, whoa, like, no, I don't know you.
That's interesting. I always thought it was from the lens of, I have the knowledge. I could fix myself. I thought it was coming from that lens. I didn't know it was like, I guess it's the equivalent of like if you're a chef, you go to another restaurant, you're like, look how they made this food.
Yes.
Probably.
Yes, literally. Because you'll start looking at the credentials and oh, wait, they just got this? They got this? You start judging.
Yeah. That's so interesting. What is some of the work that you did in therapy that helped you start to love yourself?
Honestly, inner childhood work.
Yeah.
Through a lot of exercise with my therapist, I had to go way back. Like, we're talking, like, visualize. Again, everything I'm going to mention, that everyone is going to be able to relate. Many people may not be able to believe in these techniques. You have to do what's going to make you feel good. But in general, what I'm mentioning, the inner childhood work, is being able for you to visualize little you. So obviously, there's only so much you can remember, like 5-year-old Harleny, right? Like, how was she, right? Whether it's you looking through pictures and thinking about, oh, I remember this birthday. I was crying, right? Why was I crying, right? So it's kind of literally breaking down those parts and being able to meditate and, like, talk to 5-year-old you, whichever milestone that they need to hear, right? For me, it was definitely, like, 5 to 6-year-old me. And then, of course, my teenage years, right? And, all of those things. But, like, I always remember me being 6 years old, and this will always stuck to me. I had a bike, and it got stolen.
Oh.
And I always remember, I was like, oh my God, it got stolen. It was my pink little bike, right? And again, little moments like that, somebody stole it on the block.
Sure.
I'm like, little moments like that is like, out of all the memories, that's what I remember, right? That somebody took something from me, right? Or even thinking those moments where in a picture I'm crying, someone probably told me, stop crying, right? So I bet when everyone hears this, they're probably gonna go back to their childhood photos like,
That's what I was gonna say.
let me think about this moment, right? And
Yeah.
if something comes up, again, I know that, again, there's a lot of stigma around therapy, but the biggest thing is self-awareness and
Yeah.
reflection.
Yeah.
And validating yourself. Like, that's literally the three main pillars.
Yeah.
Understanding, why you did something or why you said something, where it stems from,
Yeah.
right? But never attaching that blame to yourself, right? Of course, we're not perfect, but if there's flaws, how can we recognize those areas of improvement
Yeah.
and why?
Yeah.
So feel little tips.
Yeah, I've never done that exercise of looking at old pictures of myself, but therapy has forced me to ask my mom some interesting questions.
Oh, I have that.
Yeah. Well, now I'm curious. But like one of the questions I asked my mom, because I feel like going back to like titles, degrees, certifications, whatever, we also want to, like, besides us, we also want to make our family proud. Yet we've already done more than they've even dreamed of, right?
I'm almost like, already, that's it.
Yeah.
I always joke. I'm like, I'm gonna go back for my doctorate. They were like, you're fine. Please
Yeah.
stop. I'm not. But they're like, that's it. Like, you
Yeah.
already did it.
I asked my mom, I was like, Mom, what was your wildest dream for me? Like when I was born, like what did you want for me to do? Or what did you think I was gonna do, whatever? She was just like, I just wanted you to get a degree. That's it?
Literally.
You know all the shit I did on top of that? You know what I mean?
It's crazy.
But like you'll find out a lot just asking like family, loved ones, just like simple questions or like, how was I as a child? And like finding out how like independent and like curious, how not into groups I was, and all of those sort of little things, it'll start making a lot more sense into like who you are now.
Yeah.
So like what's something you asked your family?
Now?
Or that you said you asked your family back in the day when you started therapy that helped you kind of figure out a little bit about
When I first
yourself.
told my mom that I was in therapy, she's like, oh my God, mija, what did I do?
Oh.
She thought it was her. She was blaming herself. I was like, no, you did the best you could, right? I was like, I was just like, it's just in general, like everyone needs therapy. That's what I was saying. And she's like, okay, but even though deep down she was like, I messed up, right? Again, being a single mom of two. I just think I asked her was just like, again, I think I had to ask those questions because of therapy, and that's how I found out like when people always crying and people saying like baja la voz. I mean, my mom to this day still says baja la voz, but it's my mother, so I don't let it get to me. Versus other people like, be quiet. Yeah, don't. Mother's always gonna say get under your skin one way or the other with like peínate or whatever.
So Dominican mom thinks that, yeah.
Literally, she'll be like hasta el pelo or whatever, or something like that. But I had to just really get an understanding of like, I was like crying, all those things. And, this also goes way back if you want to get a little bit deeper. So I'm a preemie baby. So I was born premature. I was born 7 months. And, as you know, newborns need a lot of attention, right?
Sure.
Especially preemie babies and need that affection. So thinking that I was, not saying whoever's listening and you're a preemie baby, please don't be like, Harleny, that's not me. I'm talking about my journey and my story.
You were so worried to get canceled.
Huh?
You're so worried.
Yo, this is it must be 2024. You never know.
I get it. You're like, I worked too hard to get here. Y'all ain't taking me out because
Ain't nobody
preemie comment. Yeah. Oh my God, is preemie the right thing to say? Can we say that? Preemie? I don't know.
I'm not going there
Okay.
either.
Okay.
But I mean, it's true. You gotta be careful on it.
I don't know.
But still be my authentic self.
Sure.
But again, the development of a baby is very important, and given that I was a premature baby and not having my mother during those 3 months that I was in the hospital also stems from that. It's a lot of things. Again, things that talk in therapy, not necessarily saying, I'm like this because I was a preemie baby. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's a lot of things that stem of my persona in a way, right? Because again, people probably see me like, Harleny, yeah, that's it. Like, how much more are you gonna do? Like, family system. I should have been with 3 kids by now, type thing.
You get that pressure?
They're like, yeah, ¿cuándo? Yeah, that's it. I'm like, okay, like I'm 31 and I'll be 32 next year. I'm like, no hay presión.
Well, holiday season is like, well, it used to be y el novio pa' cuando, but now it's like y el bebé pa' cuando, right?
Literally, now that as I got married, they're like, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Even before that,
Sure.
like about time.
What about, like, you're obviously so comfortable in who you are these days, right? When's a time when you think your authenticity was met with resistance? Besides in childhood, when people told you were loud?
I mean, I think goes back to the spaces that I was a part of, whether it was a nonprofit.
You know, give me an instance, like when you think, and don't mention who it is, but like in generalities, like when do you think it was met with resistance or maybe misunderstood?
Perfect example. So as I was so early on in my career, mind you, I think there's only a couple of years. Like I mentioned, I'm a natural extrovert. I'm naturally happy. It's just my personality. I'm a happy person. So I remember going to an interview, and someone literally said, "You're too happy." Literally said, "You're too happy." So how do you think that people are going to perceive that? That
They asked you that?
Mind you, this was a higher institution, very Ivy League school. And they literally asked me that. They were like, and I'm like, well, that was a resistance because I remember kind of like choking up trying to answer that question. Like, how do you defend who you are
Right.
for the comfort of other people? So I remember after that, I think the interview kind of tanked, and obviously I didn't get the job, but I'm glad, right? You would think I wish I could say, I'm not gonna say the name, but it's Ivy League. It's an Ivy League school in New York. And that was the interview, and it was like an assistant director position. And that was literally what they said, because I'm just like, hello everyone, good morning. Like that's literally like my personality. And then they're just like, 'cause in this role, you were required to, have massive team meetings to faculty and all these things and students.
Right.
And one of their first questions, and they were just like, I know you're coming across as seeing as a very happy person. How do you see that as a conflict? Like, how would that be a conflict? Basically saying how will others perceive that, kind of making it a problem.
Right. Assuming that like people are going to take advantage of you or something. I don't know.
Exactly. And I said, well, I'm someone that I'm able to set boundaries. I'm able to, still be myself and making sure that the job is still going to get done at the end of the day.
You know what I'm fascinated by?
Which is crazy.
I'm fascinated that, and this isn't the first time you've received resistance, but it seems like your mindset is just like, well, if they don't like me, fuck it. Like, that's a blessing for me.
Now. And I think it's, and I'm not saying that after that interview, I didn't be like, oh my God, I suck. I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like, it doesn't say that.
Did you try to be like less happy during interviews?
I shut down.
But like during interviews, you're just like.
No, I think I was more self-aware, but I was like, I think, well, I'm trying to think of that timeline. It was that interview, I didn't get it. I was still employed, and I think after that, I actually paused the job interview process.
Wow.
Because I think it really took a toll on me. Like,
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't be myself. Like, that's hard. And you were thinking, again, this Ivy League school giving, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all these things. And me being a Latina, they will be freaking lucky to have me, right? I mean, again, I say that now. But it's more along the lines of like, it kind of took a toll at that moment. Yeah.
And a lot of people, they would take that feedback and like, it's funny because this has nothing to do with the tone, the inflection of your voice at all. These are like non-verbal things that are just about you, right? Smiling, happy, whatever. Like most people show up to the next interview and they're just like, all right, I guess I won't smile.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But then it seems like these, again, to your credit, like you've developed this part of you that's just like, well, if I don't get that, then like it's a blessing because like I want to be somewhere that accepts me.
I think, like many of us, I had to learn how to not make rejection a problem. Giving all the constant in my life of Harleny, baja la voz, Harleny this, Harleny that, right? And then the constant internal struggle of like, I'm not good enough. And like I said, I think it was because of that breakdown that I had with my licensure. I'm not saying that it was a snippet of eye. It was just more of like, I sunk low when it came to like my own mental health, that I realized like, I know that I have to keep going because I'm still that role model, right? So I think I also have to keep pushing because at the end of the day, like my mom didn't sacrifice, so much for me to just not do nothing. Like that was my mentality, right? So I think having all those external factors, going back to the support system is very important. And I know not everyone has that. But if you don't, find your tribe, right? Find your tribe of people that are gonna be able. Find your tribe of people that are gonna be able to support you.
Yeah.
When you sink low, right? And give yourself that ability to just feel, because feeling is hard.
Yeah. I mean, despite all that, again, you're in a beautiful place right now.
Thank you.
What's the one thing that continues to inspire you to be your most authentic self?
the future. I'm really committed to supporting the next generation. And again, not me relying on the validation of others to make me feel good, but that's what I got to help me keep moving forward, right? And my health and my family and recognizing the people that love me and that want to be there for me. Going back to the support system, I think that's going to continue to push for me to just be myself, because there's always going to be someone trying to dim your light, telling you that you're not good enough. But there's only going to be two paths. You're either going to let that impact you, which I know words hurt, I'm not taking that away, or you're going to go to an environment that's going to support you and just try to do the best you can.
Yeah. And I think it's important to know that the latter environment is there. We just don't think it's there, and sometimes we don't even try to find it because we think the first one is the only path that we can do.
We all have options to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
Mi gente, that wraps up another episode of the Quién, Eres podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please do us a favor. Wherever you're listening, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, a donde sea, do me a favor, leave a rating and a review. Your engagement is just going to help us in the algorithms to ensure that these experiences get heard by as many people as possible, because that's the only way that we're going to redefine professionalism. Thank you, and see you next time.